It's been 6 months since the world has lost its normal way of life. Our protagonist stands atop a monster in the middle of a war-torn city and double taps the monster. The boy thinks that the sword is a good weapon and was worth the price. As the fight is over, all he needs to do is heal himself, so opens the shop menu. He decides to buy 2 healing potions and some water and food for when he gets hungry. As he buys his items, he feels like he's getting used to everything. He drinks the healing potion and takes off his bandage as he gets completely healed. He's getting used to his new skills and the monsters he has to fight. More monsters appear in front of him, so he grabs his sword once more as he prepares to fight. As long as he has his skill, then he can buy everything he needs, be it tools, weapons, and medicine, so in this world, he's the strongest person. We get a glimpse into his life as we see him entering his classroom and getting annoyed as he sees that his desk has been overturned and his notebooks are all over the place. He gets down to clean everything up, but suddenly gets hit by a bag in his head. The rest of the students bully him, calling him a loser. The teacher now also arrives in the classroom, and instead of helping our protagonist Bucci, he scolds him to get on his seat. Bucci thinks that the teacher is behaving as usual and wonders how a man like him got to be a teacher, and the few students that used to look at him with pity have accepting the bullying as a normal thing, and thinks about the main culprit who put him into this situation. But his thoughts are interrupted by a kick from Ousaka, who bullies him all the time. The teacher points out to Ousaka that he was late, but he gives the excuse that the train was late and asks the teacher if he has any problem with that. The teacher, powerless to do anything, tells him to be careful next time and kicks Bucci once more, and the other classmates laugh at Bucci, but one of them gets worried for him. Ousaka gives the excuse that he saw a bug and tells Bucci to move. Ousaka Ito is able to do all this without any repercussions because he's the grandson of the chairman of this school, Ousaka High School. As the chairman is very close to his grandson, no one can oppose Ousaka, who abuses his grandfather's authority as much as he can, but only one person, Bucci, didn't like Ousaka acting like a king. Ousaka tried to boss around Bucci by telling him get a beer for him, but Bucci straight up refused, which angered Ousaka, who gave him a good thrashing. Ousaka hit him a bit and told him to go get the drink, but Bucci didn't do it and tried to fight back, and he even managed to land a punch on Ousaka. That incident led Bucci to become Ousaka's target. At the time, Bucci was expecting some attention after punching the most troublesome guy in school, but in reality, most of the students sided with Ousaka and joined together to bully Bucci, so now even if he does manage to get rid of Ousaka, he won't be able to get along peacefully with the rest of the students as he can't trust anyone else after what happened. Totoki Coin, who is the class representative, but only in name, tries to approach Bucci, but is unable to speak what she wants to say. Bucci grows restless and asks her if she needs something. Totoki asks him if he's fine, which is all she wanted to ask. Bucci says that it's none of her business, at which she apologizes to him. The rest of the class sees the interaction and wonder what's wrong with Bucci, despite Totoki going out of her way to talk with him and say that this behavior is the reason he always gets bullied and call him an idiot. Bucci thinks that they shouldn't talk if they don't know anything and thinks of them as being the wrongdoers. Bucci tells Totoki to go somewhere else and she apologizes and leaves. Later, Bucci is pinned down by Ousaka's lackeys while Ousaka looks down at him and tells him to resist a bit and calls him boring. Bucci is tired of being a punching bag for Ousaka, who is also getting tired of beating up Bucci, so suggests killing him, saying no one would be sad if Bucci died as his parents are already dead, and ever since his first year he's living alone, and calls his situation pitiful. Ousaka gives Ishida a knife and tells him to cut Bucci a bit, but he's hesitant, which angers Ousaka. Ishida tries to argue, but Ousaka beats up Ishida for not doing as told. Ousaka holds the knife close to Bucci and tells him to cry and beg, otherwise he'll cut him up, but Bucci remains stubborn. Ousaka gets mad and tells Bucci to swear fealty to him, but Bucci keeps staring at him. At this, Ousaka kicks him and leaves, saying he's tired of this. Later, Bucci laughs for getting beaten up once more, but he remembers his father telling him to give up as only an idiot struggles and ends up hurting themselves, so he must accept reality. Bucci is determined to not die like his father, who tried to run away from life's problems. Suddenly, Bucci feels a sharp pain in his head and falls to the ground. He gets back up and begins walking, wondering what happened. Suddenly, he sees monsters chasing everyone. The students have managed to get a few monsters locked up, but it's all in vain as a giant monster smashes through the building like nothing, making everyone panic. The monster grabs a student and eats it like a treat. Bauchi is shocked at the horrifying scenes he's seen and wonders just what exactly are the monsters attacking everyone. Bauchi gets shocked seeing a person get eaten by a monster and thinks that the monsters will get him too, so decides to leave as quickly as he can. He thinks about heading back to the classroom, but remembers how everyone else treated him, so questions himself for worrying about them, but remembers Totoki and gives himself the excuse that his bag is still in the class, but thinks he doesn't need it. Meanwhile, a person has finally managed to reach the police on his phone, but it's too late as he's already been eaten and only his arm remains. The emergency services are unable to get anywhere due to traffic jams caused from panic. Bauchi sees the monsters everywhere and is shocked that the monsters that are eating the people are all over the town. Suddenly, an explosion occurs behind him and he gets shocked seeing more monsters appears. He decides to run away. While running, he gets tired and stops to take a breather, but takes a peek inside a house and spots a monster eating a man. He runs again thinking that the monsters are everywhere. He hears a scream for help but ignores it and heads to his house. Once inside, he sees that everything is still fine and he still has electricity, which relieves him. He turns on the TV and sees the news that many people have reported monsters throughout the city, which have wounded many people, so the police and firefighters have been deployed. Bauchi realizes that it just wasn't his town, but the entire country has been affected and wonders if it's like this all over the world and thinks that it's a massive disaster. Suddenly, Bauchi's head hurts again. He wonders why it's hurting so much, then remembers that Ousaka had pulled violently on his hair. Bauchi takes a bath and thinks that the monsters aren't of this world as they are attacking people without hesitation. In addition to that, the monsters came out from inside the school instead of outside it, and he can't figure out just what they are. Bauchi was beaten up badly by Ousaka and the others, so he bandages himself up. Bauchi remembers that most novels have stories like what's happening right now, in which monsters from other worlds suddenly come to theirs, and he takes out a book and thinks that the monsters look like goblin. Bauchi thinks that in times like these he should try to check his status and shout status open, but nothing happens. It's dangerous outside because of all the things running around everywhere, and it seems unlikely that things will return to normal, so Bauchi decides to prepare for things to come in advance and decides to stock up, but realizes that he'll run out of food and basic toiletries soon, but that's only if the situation continues its current course. Thinking the police and JSDF will be able to handle the situation as they are armed, Bauchi sits down and watches some news, but the news reports that the creatures have appeared inside the town police department and fighting can be heard inside the building, so they are right now unable to reach the police department, and it's possible that the creatures have taken over the building. This shocks Bauchi, who thinks that the JSDF may be able to handle the situation, but suddenly the creatures breach the news station studio, injuring many and causing some to go missing, but right now it's too dangerous to search for them. Bauchi worries that if the monsters run rampant in the world, then nuclear weapons may be used or humanity might even fight each other for resources, and this is a complete and utter disaster and panics for his own survival. Bauchi remembers his father telling him to give up as his mother won't ever come back, and there's nothing he can do, so he should just give up. Bauchi screams and decides to go shopping while he can and get all the necessary things. He plans to go to the supermarket first, and then the department store, but thinks that he needs to come back to his house to leave the bags, but it'll take too much time. All these issues annoy him and thinks that it would be very good to have magical skills like teleportation or flight. Suddenly, a shop menu containing unique skills appears in front of him. This confuses him at first, but he calms down and gets glad that he gets to choose skills. He thinks that they are in a fantasy world now, as there are now both monsters and skills from another world, and this strangeness is his new reality now. He's curious to check out the skill, and so opens up his shop, which looks like a normal website. He checks the recommended discounted items and spots a stamina recovery and wound healing items for 150, so decides to buy and test it out. He only has 3,000 in his balance, so thinks that the item is best for him. He purchases the item, at which the system sends the healing potion seed to box. Bauchi thinks that it was easy and opens box and clicks on the potion, at which it appears beside his feet. Thinking he has to drink it, he opens the bottle up and drinks it up, and is surprised to find that the pain is gone, and his wound has also disappeared, and the effects are just as they were described. He sees that everything he needs, such as food, daily use items, magic, weapons, and medicine can be bought from the shop, which will allow him to live happily despite the world being full of monsters. Meanwhile, there is panic at the school as news has reached to almost everyone that there are monsters eating them. Only Totoki is worried about Bauchi and hopes that she can still save him, as she doesn't want to do nothing once again. Bochi uses the status scope to see the status of objects through it. He sees that the building is a low-level dungeon with 4 monsters in one core and realizes that the building itself has turned into a dungeon. He can't see any monsters on the road, which leads him to believe that the monsters are only filling up the dungeons, so he thinks that the infrastructure is operational and the world may be safer than he thought. He again checks the news and sees the report that casualties from the monsters have increased 600, which leads him to change his previous opinion. The news also reports that false rumors are spreading online, at which to check if the internet is still working. He searches for his phone but realizes that he's left it at his school. He checks the school with a status scope and sees that the school has turned into a low-level dungeon, but it contains an enormous number of monsters in 2 cores. Boki thinks that it'll be very risky to go and pick it up, but he doesn't want to lose the contents of his phone, but determined to get his phone no matter what. He opens the shop and decides to buy weapons. He spots that a knife called the Killer Knife costs 20,000 yen and sees that it has a 5% chance to instantly kill the target. He disregards the knife and searches for stronger weapons, but all the others are so expensive. He spots a battle guide item reading which will let him learn martial arts. He decides that having it would be a good idea, so with the money he has at the moment buys the knife, book, and other needed items. He thinks that the skill is pointless as he has no money, but luckily, he can get the required amount by waiting until morning, but his phone might not remain safe until then, and as he can't risk losing his phone, he is left no choice but to fight with what he currently has. Late at night in an empty classroom, Totoki hopes that Boki made it out fine, but she now has to survive through the night. In another part of the building, Boki uses his scope and finds out that 8 monsters are present on his part of the building, but there is only the monster in front of him on his floor. As the monster is an F-rank goblin, he thinks he has a chance, but suddenly a monster appears right behind him. He thinks that the monster came from a different building and takes out his knife to defend himself. He panics a bit, but suddenly his body moves on its own, and he cuts down the monster into 2 with a single strike. He realizes that he got the move from the battle guide, which he only had to read, so the fantasy isn't just for show. The other monster he saw earlier now moves towards him, but Bochi is now calm and ready to fight and retrieve his phone and go back home. Totoki spots a shadowy figure and, thinking it's a monster, covers her mouth to not make a sound. She hears the door opening, at which she attacks with the stick she's holding, but her attack gets stopped by Bochi, who covers her mouth and tells her to be quiet. He removes his hand of her, saying he'll explain later and that they should move now. Totoki is relieved that Bochi is safe, which confuses Boki. Suddenly, Totoki loses her conscience and falls atop Boki. Boki tries to wake her up, but she's out cold, so Boki decides that he can't leave Totoki alone like this. Totoki remembers that in her childhood, Bochi was always there when she needed help, so she wanted to become the kind of person that could help others, and she wanted to help Hiro when he would get bullied, but she couldn't do anything. She regains her consciousness and wonders where she is. She remembers that she was being chased by monsters, but suddenly the phone begins ringing. The call is about her sister. While she is on the phone, Boki opens the door and enters the room. Totoki turns, spots Boki, and shouts that it's her friend's house. Boki asks her what happened, at which she gets embarrassed and wonders why she is there, and if her face is red or her hair is fine, but she realizes that this might be Boki's house. Boki doesn't want her to stay for too long, so tells her to leave if she's up. Totoki replies that she'll leave and thanks him for saving her life. Boki replies that it doesn't matter. This disappoints Totoki, who leaves as she has to pick up her sister. While leaving, she apologizes to Bochi for not being able to help him when he got bullied, as she was too scared. Boki doesn't care about that and says that he won't blame her, as he knows how she feels, as there's no one in this world who will sacrifice themselves for someone else. Totoki remembers how when they were little, Bochi would save her, and says that she just wanted to become like Boki and wishes that she was as brave as him and could stand up to Ousaka for all the wrong things he did. She desired to help Boki and become someone who he could trust. Boki says that's impossible, as there is no way for people to trust each other for free. Totoki remains firm and says that it's not true, as she trusts him, but Boki doesn't budges and says that it's pointless. Totoki shouts that it's not for him to decide. Bochi asks Totoki if she would have become her ally if he trusted her, and says that the end result would be the same no matter what, and she wouldn't be able to sacrifice herself for him, and in the end betray him, and even if he ends up trusting her, she will just betray him one day, and that it's not just her, he will act the same, and if your life is on the line, then betraying someone is easy and humans will betray and get betrayed without any exceptions, and advises her that if she wants to live wisely, then she shouldn't trust him or anyone else. Totoki says Ousaka, which Bocchi thinks that she has understood what he said, but she surprises him by saying she'll trust him. Bocchi shouts at her to not trust him, at which she shouts that she will trust him, so she won't trust him, which leaves Bocchi confused. Totoki explains that Bocchi carried her all the way to his house from school and saved her life, so it's fine now, and he should let her trust him, and adds that it's unreasonable to save her and then tell her to not trust him, so she has decided to not trust him because he's telling her so, and leaves shouting that she'll trust that and not trust him, and wishes him good luck, calling him an idiot. The interaction leaves Bocchi thinks that Totoki is a very annoying girl. Later, Totoki thanks her friend for taking care of Mahina. The friend says that there was no one home with her sister and father are on a business trip, so they all need to help each other and she can rely on her anytime. Totoki says they'll be fine and thanks her. Totoki sees that their apartment looks strange and sees that the monsters are everywhere and hunting the residents, so she decides to head to the evacuation shelter. She spots that the monsters have entered even the primary school and carries Mahina on her back to protect her, and thinks that she has nowhere else to go than the house from earlier. Upon reaching the house, she sees that a monster has suddenly appeared and attacked the resident. She wonders what to do and heads to Bocchi's house. Bocchi tells her to leave, but she knows that she's selfish, but Bocchi cuts her off, saying she's very selfish coming to his place after everything she said, but she begs, saying she has nowhere else to go and asks to stay just for the day. Bocchi declines again, but he spots Mahina, who clings to her sister and cries as she's scared that the same thing that happened earlier will happen there too. Totoki calms her down, saying the place is safe so they don't have to worry. Mahina asks her sister to go back, but she says that they have no home now, at which she cries even more. Bocchi now lets Totoki to come in and tells Mahina that this place is fine, so she should trust him. He lets them come in, but only for the day, which makes the two girls relieved. Totoki and Mahina go to take a bath and are glad to find that the bath is very big, at which Totoki wonders if Bocchi really lives in this big house all alone. Bocchi had a dream in which he was fighting monsters, but betrayed by everyone else, causing him to be helpless as he got torn to shreds by monsters. That dream was pretty sickening, but it was just a dream. However, his current situation isn't one. He thinks to get more used to his condition and decides to check what else the shop has. He sees that they have foods, games, weapons, and everything else that he may need. He wonders if the shop also contains magical weapons. He is shocked to see that the weapon costs an astronomical 2 trillion, which is out of his reach. He looks at the weapon stats and wonders if he will ever need that. He thinks that they will also have familiars, so he will be able to buy monsters too. He sees that there are ranks A, B, and C, but they are all so expensive. He spots a monster on sale and finds it cute and is glad to find that it's on sale and it can even talk. He reads that the familiar will have absolute loyalty to its master, which makes him decide that he should purchase it immediately. The familiar instantly appears in his inventory, at which he selects it. A drop of blood falls to the ground and the magic begins. A cute bird-shaped familiar manifests itself in front of Bocchi. Bocchi is overtaken by the familiar's cuteness. The familiar excitedly jumps on Bocchi's face and calls him its master. Bocchi tells it to calm down and takes it off him, at which the familiar cries and apologizes to him, saying it was very happy that it got to meet Bocchi. Bocchi pets the bird, which enjoys it a lot. Sonic Owl is a pretty long name, so Bocchi decides to call it Sol. The bird loves the new name and again jumps at Bocchi's face. Bocchi is surprised that Sol can talk, at which Sol reveals that he can even turn into a human. Bocchi asks Sol to transform now. Sol flies up and transforms into a cute girl, but after transforming, Sol can no longer fly, so comes crashing down on Bocchi. The girls hear the noise and worry for Bocchi and come to his room to investigate. They enter the room and see Sol on top of Bocchi. Sol is happy to see them and introduces herself. Totoki asks Bocchi who Sol is. Bocchi thinks that this is bad, so lies that Sol is his cousin. This confuses Totoki, but Bocchi presses and says that Sol is just his cousin who was staying at his place, but Totoki is still confused. Sol asks Bocchi what he's doing, to which he replies that he's depositing his money before shopping. Sol sees that Bocchi has put knives and potions in the cart and asks him if he's planning on fighting something. Bocchi plans to use these items to conquer a dungeon. 2 weeks after the monster outbreak, the world appears to have somewhat calmed down a bit, but there are still some messed up aspects. The news reports that 42 more people have fallen victim to the monsters, which has brought up the number of casualties to 2,289 and the missing number 30,000. Totoki worries for the safety of everyone else and hasn't talked properly with Buchi ever since he told her to do whatever she wants. But as Buchi is helping out a lot with food and everything else, she feels really bad and is grateful but still can't stop thinking about Buchi not trusting anyone. Mahina finishes her food and thanks Totoki for it. She cleans Mahina up and thinks about making some curry for Buchi, but thinks that it won't work well. Meanwhile, in Buchi's room, Saul flies back in through the window and turns into human form. Saul reports that the number of dungeons has been increasing in the past 2 weeks, so even if there are only a few of them, right now the number is still rising. Buchi realizes that if this keeps up, then his house too might turn into a dungeon, which would be very bad for them, which is why he needs to conquer some dungeons, but there are things that he'll have to look into first. Buchi gets ready and tells Saul to keep eye on the house and let him know in case anything changes. Saul agrees and says that she'll come look for him in case he takes too long, which Buchi agrees to. Buchi finds Saul's smile very cute and assures her that as long as he has the shop skill, nothing will go wrong. On the stairs, Totoki thinks of ways to approach Buchi to offer him some curry and tries to assure herself that she can do this, but suddenly spots Buchi coming down. Buchi gets annoyed that Totoki caught her, but she tries to ask about the curry, but he keeps walking forward. She asks him if he's going anywhere, but he ignores her, saying it's none of her business. She tries to tell him to be careful, but he doesn't listen and smashes the door as he leaves. Later, Buchi uses his scope and to find a small dungeon and goes to one with only 4 monsters. He spots only 2 monsters outside the house, so to test his theory, he stands still right in front of the monster and doesn't move despite the monster moving within striking distance. Buchi realizes that his theory was correct, that the monster's objective is to massacre, so the increase in dungeons is to serve that objective. But despite normally running after the first human, they spot the monsters don't step outside their bounds, so in other words, the area that the monsters are allowed to hunt in is restricted to the dungeon bounds. He has other things that he needs to verify too, but for now this will do, so he takes out his knife and hits the monster once in the stomach and once in the eye, killing it. Realizing that the monster's torso isn't strong, he jumps up and stabs the other monster in its eye. Now confident after defeating 2 monsters, it's now time for Buchi to conquer the dungeon. Saul heads downstairs even though Buchi had told her to not talk to Totoki, but she can't handle the hunger anymore. Totoki spots Saul and asks her if she's hungry and says that there's some curry available and asks her to chat a bit as she can't sleep either. Meanwhile, Buchi, after killing 2 monsters, continues clearing the dungeon, and as he killed 2 monsters in the garden, there should still be 2 left and 1 core, which he confirms with his status scope. Buchi is able to see how many cores there are through his observation glass, so thinks that it must be some kind of item and assumes it to be a type of treasure to get, which he needs to figure out how to clear dungeons, and if he manages to understand their structure, then he may be able to protect his own house from becoming a dungeon, but heads inside to clean it up for the moment. He assumes that there is only a single monster on the first floor, but is unable to spot it. He spots a slime and pokes at it, but gets no response. He had previously seen how to kill slimes in a manga called Dungeon Food. He uses his scope and is surprised to see that there really is a core inside it. He stabs the slime where the core is supposed to be, which kills the slime without any fuss. He thinks that the last monster should be on the first floor and heads upstairs, but the monster has already hidden in one of the rooms, so he can't find it right away. He thinks that it's another slime, so uses his scope to search for it and spots a giant-eyed monster in a corner of one of the rooms. He thinks that it must be the core and heads towards it, but accidentally lets his guard down, so he is unable to defend against the monster's attack, which comes from right below through the floor. He wonders what's going on and sees a monster rise up through the floor. The monster has a tight grip on Buchi, so he thinks that he will soon die, so he pulls out his knife and attacks the monster with it, but it's not effective and doesn't anything to the monster. He tries to think of something and remembers killing the slime by attacking its core, so he gambles everything on attacking the monster's core. He throws his knife, which the monster sees and easily dodges, but the monster wasn't his target. His target was the core in the corner of the room, which gets hit by the flying knife. The knife causes corrosion to occur on the wounded spot, so the monster begins disintegrating, causing Buchi to escape this dangerous situation, but he isn't in the clear yet as he's badly wounded. He buys a healing potion which instantly heals his wound, saving his life. However, the potion only healed the wound, and as Buchi had lost a lot of blood, he feels sleep and falls unconscious. Totoki sits idly while Saul is eating. However, the both of them are worried that something has happened to Bucci as he's been gone for too long and think to go after him, and the both try to urge each other to go save Bucci, but realize that there's no need for that, so both of them begin running towards the dungeon that Bucci went into. Inside the dungeon, they find a decapitated body which shocks Totoki, but Saul manages to find Bucci unconscious on the floor. Totoki picks up Bucci on her bag and the two rush him back to the house. Later, Bucci wakes up and sees that he's under a familiar roof. He gets up and sees that Saul is sleeping on top of him in her bird form. Totoki is also sleeping and dreams about Bucci not thanking her for saving him and scolding her, to which she apologizes while sleep talking. Seeing Totoki sleep peacefully, Bucci closes the door and leads her be. Later, the news reports that the operation to recapture the Parliament House will be carried out today, and the news reports that it's been investigated that the monsters only appear and stay inside buildings, and there are at least 1,000 abnormal buildings in Tokyo, and over 5,000 in the entire country. So JSDF has been dispatched to aid search and rescue events, and the minimum number of required evacuation centers has been set up, and the government plans to supply them with self-reliant disaster equipment. The appearance of the monsters is the only topic being discussed nowadays on social media. The JSDF attacks the monsters, but their bullets have no effect on them, so they lure one of them outside and then attack it with a tank's main cannon. The JSDF has finally begun its operation to take back the Parliament House from the monsters, and this is the first time since the war they have used live ammunition inside a city. As it's been reported that the number of dungeons keeps increasing, and as Bucci is feeling hungry, he buys some things from the store. While Totoki is watching the news with Mahina, they hear loud screams, and then an explosion occurs which cuts the news feed. Suddenly, they hear screams coming from outside the window. It's coming from the house right across the street. Totoki begins to call the police, but Bucci takes clothes from his inventory as he prepares to head outside. Totoki tries to stop him and asks if he's going somewhere, but he simply tells her to not do something unnecessary. Totoki asks him if it's unnecessary to worry and if he isn't scared. Bucci replies that the monsters don't leave the building, so it's a lot safer outside with that in mind, so there's nothing to be scared of. Totoki is scared by the mere existence of the monsters and is scared of watching the people on television get attacked and her friends not replying to her, and asks if it isn't normal to be scared of things like that, and being scared for someone going out in times like this is normal. Bucci doesn't care, at which Totoki shouts that she doesn't want to see him covered in blood like yesterday. Totoki panics and thinks she shouldn't have said that and worries about Bucci getting angry at her now, but he doesn't, gets mad at her and just leaves, saying he doesn't has time to worry about others as there's something he has to do to ensure their survival. He tells Totoki to stay put and be quiet as he'll be back soon, and heads outside. Totoki is glad because Bucci never told her to stay at the house before. While walking on the street, Bucci spots that a group of people are following him and then sees that another group is blocking his way ahead. He spots a side street and heads into it to get away, but another group of people has that way covered too. They call Bucci a creep for talking to himself. Bucci is surprised to find that Ousaka and the rest are still alive. Ousaka laughs and calls Bucci annoying and says that with the way the world is right now, no one will care if another corpse appears in a random monster house. Ousaka tells Bucci to answer his question and threatens that if he doesn't answer, then he'll die. Ousaka asks Bucci what he was doing there earlier. Bucci realizes that Ousaka and the gang has been following him and saw what he was doing after he left the house. A little while earlier, Bucci, while walking on the street, hears Saul calling for him, but he's unable to see her. Saul is way up above in the sky. Bucci is able to communicate with Saul because he had used telepathy dumplings, which allow him to use telepathy in a radius of 10 kilometers. Saul is impressed with the dumplings as they allow them to talk even if they are far away from each other, and compliment Bucci's shop. Bucci tells her that his shop isn't all-powerful as it has a critical weak point, which is that he needs a way to make money. The fighting power he can get from the shop depends on the money he has, so the more money he will have, the stronger he'll get, and even though he inherited 10 million yen from his mom, he still can't afford high-grade items. Saul asks him how he plans to earn more money. He plans to get the money using drop items. Earlier, when he had killed monsters and cleared a dungeon, drop items automatically showed up in his box and thinks that they were rewards. Selling those drop items in the shop will give him money. Saul figures it out and asks if he'll earn money by clearing dungeons, at which he praises her for being so smart. Saul excitedly asks Bucci how many potato chips he can buy with 5 points, but he declines buying them. He shows her that the item he wants costs 1 million as the fights get easier as you get a strong weapon. Saul spots the dungeon core and points out that one of them is worth 1 million points, but Bucci says to continue with the work. The plan is for Bucci to use the dungeon detection map and Saul to observe from the sky. With this plan, Bucci will clear the nearby dungeons. Ousaka had seen Bucci leave a dungeon and now calls him a creep for muttering to himself. Bucci tells Saul to keep waiting as there's no point in having an honest fight with Ousaka. Saul asks Bucci if he knows these people. Bucci calls Ousaka a human scum, at which Ousaka jokingly says that he can't hear him and asks where all this confidence went and taunts Bucci, saying he's too scared to even talk right now. Ousaka tells him that they caught him entering and leaving people's houses and asks him if he is looking for dungeon cores. This shocks Bucci, who wonders how Ousaka knows about the existence of dungeon cores and how much he knows about them. Bouch is intrigued by this development, but decides to finish the conflict as soon as possible as he wanted to punch Ousaka for a long time. Ousaka wants to kill Bucci, but plans to first make him beg for his life and then take the core from him later. He sends one of his men to attack Bucci, and he jumps up, cracking the ground, and grabs his baseball bat so hard that it begins to break apart. Bucci is shocked to see such power and his opponent's hand enlarging in size, but luckily the attack misses and doesn't hit him, and instead smashes the road right in front of him. The enemy's hand enlarges and narrowly misses Bucci, but he presses the attack and tries to grab Bucci, but Bucci quickly opens his shop and buys the perfect ring, which grants him super speed, allowing him to bypass his attacker and head straight for Ousaka. Ousaka sees Bucci coming for him and begins to sink into the ground, allowing him to dodge the attack. The fat opponent walks towards Bucci to catch him. Bucci is still determined to hit Ousaka, but realizes that with his opponent's abilities it won't be that easy, so decides to change tactics and begins running. Ousaka sees Bucci runs and asks what he's planning and orders his men to chase after Bucci and make sure to not lose track of him. One of Ousaka's men uses his ability and constantly texts orders to the rest, allowing them to corner Bucci. This man's ability allows him to constantly see where Bucci is and track him. Meanwhile, Bucci asks Saul if she can see them and asks her to tell him their positions to buy him time, but Saul warns Bucci that the enemies have already surrounded his area. Bucci thinks that his opponents are more troublesome than he expected, and he wants to buy an item, but doesn't want to let the enemies see his shop skill. Bucci heads inside the nearby warehouse, and the masked man relays the information to Ousaka, who orders his men to not let Bucci escape. Now that he's alone in the warehouse, Bucci finds the item that he wants to buy and sees that it costs 1.5 million, but he has no choice and has to buy it. Ousaka breaks down the door to the warehouse and calls Bucci an idiot for thinking he could hide in there, but Bucci calls Ousaka an idiot for coming all this way only to get beaten up and stares at him. This angers Ousaka, who orders Bucci to stop looking at him like that as it's creeping him out and threatens him that he's holding a real gun. Bucci says that Ousaka isn't ready to shoot a real person yet, and his point gets proven as Ousaka fires right beside him and tells him to be scared. Ousaka keeps firing near Bucci and shouts at him to hide and be scared of him, and finally strikes at him, but it's ineffective. Bucci is unaffected by the attacks and keeps staring at Ousaka as he heads to attack him and punches him, which leads to Ousaka hitting Bucci in the head, accidentally making him collapse to the ground lifeless. Ousaka laughs like a madman and kicks Bucci's body. Meanwhile, Bucci sits safely as he witnesses the whole ordeal and is glad that they think he's dead, as they won't look for someone who's already dead. Bucci survived because he got used copy doll, which acts as a decoy. Bucci decides to leave now as he finally managed to accomplish his goal of punching Ousaka. Mahina asks Bucci why he and Totoki don't get along together, and he explains that it's just the way it is. In their childhood, both of their hearts were connected to each other as they spent a lot of time together, and Totoki would call him Hiro-kun and would ask him what he's doing and invite him to go to the festival with her and play with her, and would go on trips with him. He was also present at the Totoki family vigil ceremony hall for her mother's funeral, where she was crying a lot but tried to stop herself, saying she shouldn't cry anymore as she's a big sister now. Later, Totoki would also invite Bucci to karaoke when she went with her friends, but her friends would object, saying they are in middle school, so Bucci probably wants to hang out with other boys. Totoki apologizes to Bucci, but he doesn't cares. While walking home, Totoki asks Bucci why he doesn't hangs out with other boys. He doesn't gives a reply and says that he'll go visit his mother now, at which Totoki also wants to go with him. Later, when Bouchi's mother dies, at which Totoki tries to comfort him, but she too begins to cry and doesn't knows why. Bouchi also doesn't knows why he's crying, as he doesn't knows if he's feeling remorse or sadness, but still it hurts so much that he can't breathe. They were also present at his mother's last birthday, but she wouldn't tell her age, saying it's a secret. Later, Totoki came to check in on Bouchi, but found him fighting his dad. Bouchi blamed his dad for his mother's death, as he abandoned them, which led to her dying while calling his name. His father wouldn't give him any reply, which angered him further. He sees Totoki, who came because he didn't come to school for quite some time, which worried her. Bouchi asks her why she's crying and tells her to leave. Later, on the first day of high school, Bouchi had gotten into a fight with some seniors at the entrance ceremony, which led to him getting suspended. This made his classmates fear him. Later, Totoki went to Bouchi's class to walk home together with him. At his home, she asked him about where his father is, but he doesn't care about him and hands Totoki his dad's suicide note. Upon reading the note, Totoki begins to cry as it's too sad, and she feels bad for him. She tries to comfort him, but he stops her and angrily asks her what she's doing. She replies that she's just been worried about him. He shouts at her to not call him hero, and he can survive in his house all by himself, so doesn't needs her pity, and tells her to leave and don't talk to him at school. Recently, when the monster outbreak happened, Totoki was relieved when she found out that Bouchi is safe, and even after all the time they have spent together saving each other, Totoki is still hesitant to interact with Bouchi, so gets Mahina to do things like giving Bouchi the laundry. Mahina asks Bouchi why they don't get together, and the answer shocks her. Inside a hospital building, some soldiers have spotted a monster and are hiding to ambush it. The signal is given, and they all rush to pin down the monster and secure the floor. They have information that there should be 6 people on the floor, so they begin searching for them, but they must hurry as the monsters are coming at them again. It's been 2 months since the monsters began appearing, but the damage is still getting worse, as the death toll now stands at 15,238 and 260,000 people are missing. As it's safe to be outside, people have started living out in the open, which has led to 1.6 million homeless people nationwide, with 4.3 million people having evacuated the capital. Mahina asks Totoki if they can stay inside and go home, but before she replies, Bouchi appears and brings some stuff for them and asks Mahina what she wants. Mahina wants some pudding, so he uses his shop skill to buy pudding, which makes her very happy. He leaves, telling them to let him know in case they need anything else. Totoki thanks him and finds that Bouchi has brought lots of stuff for them. Bouchi is looking at his balance and spending when Saul praises him by saying that as long as he has this skill, no one can beat him. Bouchi says that it's only true for low-ranked dungeons, and he may find some higher-ranked dungeons out there, and monsters won't be the only things that he'll have to fight, so he needs to buy a weapon above C rank as soon as possible, but for that he needs money. Saul excitedly says that they should go and get another demon corp, but Bouchi stops her, saying they can't do that right now. Saul disappointedly asks the reason behind that, and Bouchi replies that he's supposed to be dead now, so if he collects cores and begins standing out, then pretending to be dead would have been pointless. Saul says that he doesn't need to hide as he's so strong, and pouts. Bouchi says he didn't pretend to die because he couldn't win, and buys a metamorphosis potion, saying he won't hide but instead make everyone find him. He takes the potion and says that it's time to stand out as much as they can, which shocks Saul. 2 people are scavenging whatever they can from the mall when suddenly one of them spots monsters heading towards them and try to run away. The monsters are about to get them when suddenly a woman dressed in a kimono appears out of nowhere and slashes the monsters to pieces. She sheaths her sword and asks them if they are injured. The men aren't injured and thank her for saving them. The girl smiles and says she's glad that the men are safe. Previously, Bouchi had bought a metamorphosis potion, so this woman is none other than Bouchi himself. Earlier, Bouchi had crushed the metamorphosis potion he bought in his palm, which had transformed him into a beautiful girl. Bouchi asks Saul how he looks. Saul is captivated by the beauty of his voice and new body, and teaches him how to smile like a woman. Bouchi, in his new body, has named himself Torikato Shina, a dungeon conqueror. Sometime later, a house turns into a dungeon, which leads to a kid being trapped inside. His family member tries to rush in to save him, but the others don't let him go back in as it's too dangerous. Sheena appears and introduces herself as a dungeon conqueror and hands them her card. She heads inside and slays the monster core. She finds the kid, who's doing her best to hide and is scared. To calm the girl down, Sheena hands her some candy and then carries her outside. The woman thanks Sheena, who is just happy to see that the girl is safe. Sheena asks whose house has been turned into a dungeon. A man hesitantly says his house was turned into a dungeon, at which Sheena tells him to leave it to her, and she easily defeats the demon core. Others also come to her, and she helps them too. She clears everyone's dungeons and announces that all of their requirements related to dungeon clearing will be handled by her. The news of a beautiful woman clearing dungeons spreads like wildfire, while Bauchi gets all the demon cores he needs. Meanwhile, a group of people who clear dungeons have heard about Sheena working as a dungeon clearing contractor. They gossip that she works alone and does it for free and wonder if she will join them. One of them points out that she uses a katana, which is illegal, but their leader Ousaka is fine by it as she helps people, and they head off towards their next target. Sheena is contracted to clear out 500 tsubos of land. Seeing that the area is huge, she demands a payment of 10 million. The man panics and says that she used to do it for free, but Sheena says that a large area like this will take a lot of work to clear and asks him to understand. Sheena, of course, is lying because she has now become famous enough that rich people will now pay her a lot of money to get their houses back, so she'll now take their money and make some extra by selling demon cores. The man panics at her asking so much money, but his boss arrives and apologizes Sheena for not meeting her personally as there was an emergency. He is Fukuzawa Juichiru and is the one who requested for her. He shows Sheena that a lot of people are in need of urgent medical care, and it was his clinic that got invaded by the monsters. He assures Sheena that the compensation won't be an issue as he just wants his clinic back no matter what. Sheena reintroduces herself to him and tells him to leave the dungeon clearing to her. In the clinic, Sheena battles multiple monsters and easily clears the dungeon. She looks at a family portrait of Juichiru and thinks she can make even more money. Juichiru writes a check for 10 million and gives it to Sheena and offers to arrange some supplies for her if she needs them. Seeing him hand over the money just like that, Sheena thinks that Fukuzawa really is rich and asks him if he has a daughter, to which he replies yes. Sheena asks Fukuzawa to leave his daughter in her care if he's fine with that. A truck crashes into a car, causing the girl to be severely injured, making her wheelchair bound. Despite this, she still attends her school and is supported by her friends who offer to push Kanna's wheelchair in PE class. One of the boys offer to push her, but the girls don't let him. Kanna asks them why they are fighting, and her friend replies that everything is fine and she won't let the boys touch her and they will protect her. Kanna smiles and thanks her friends for always helping her. In the present, Joichiro tells Sheena that he has two conditions. The first one is that she mustn't tell his daughter that she won't recover, and the second one is that she mustn't tell her that she will recover. Sheena wonders what the point is but doesn't care much about it and confirms that if she succeeds, then her reward will be 100 million yen, which she shouldn't forget. Kanna comes in her wheelchair and asks if Sheena is the new doctor. Juichiru introduces Kanna and his wife to Sheena, and Sheena introduces herself to Kanna. Kanna excitedly tells her that she knows her name and asks if she's the one who saved their clinic and house and she had seen her on the internet. Kanna's mother also compliments Sheena for her cuteness. Kanna asks Sheena why she is there, at which she almost says that she's about to heal her but stops as she remembers the deal and lies that she's there only to examine her as she has some pharmaceutical knowledge. Kanna appears to be pleased to see that Sheena is her new doctor. Sheena says that she's just someone with a special technique, but in reality, she has special skills. They begin the examination, but Sheena is unable to understand Kanna's clinical records, so pulls out her observation glass to check Kanna. Juichiru asks what it is, and she lies, saying it's a special examination device. Sheena plans to quickly cure Kanna, get her money, and then leave the place, but she realizes that Kanna has acquired hemiplegia caused by a spinal cord injury. Sheena now understands why Juichiru had set his two conditions, but finds it strange that Kanna has her eyes set on her. Kanna stares at Sheena and lets her know that her brother and sister are both doctors working overseas. Sheena asks her if her brother and sister are doing well in the present conditions, and Kanna answers that they both appear to be doing well, and she feels at ease with Sheena and feels that her sister is with her. Sheena gets a strange feeling, as she had previously thought that Kanna's family was just a bit different, but something's very strange. Sheena announces that the examination is over. Juichiru wants to hear about the results, but first tells his wife and daughter to leave them alone, but Sheena says that there's no need for that as she wants his wife and daughter to find out about that too. Sheena announces to them all that Kanna's legs won't be healed. Sheena realizes that there isn't even a slight chance of them healing because Kanna has acquired hemiplegia caused due to injury, and there's no way to cure it in theory. Juichiru and Kanna's mom get concerned, but Sheena cuts them off and says that she can cure Kanna and make it so she can start walking right this moment, which shocks the parents. Sheena takes out a medicine and guarantees them that if Kanna drinks it, then she'll be able to begin walking. It's the mini elixir which she bought from the shop. It's a medicine that heals all injuries and is very expensive, but she'll still be able to make a profit of 100 million that she'll get. Juichiro is skeptical of the medicine, but Sheena tells him that he can pay her after Kanna's legs are completely healed. Sheena thinks that if she's getting the strange feeling because Joichiro doesn't want his daughter to heal, then he should refuse, but Joichiro asks her his daughter will really recover. Kanna realizes she had been overthinking it and tells him that Kanna will recover. Sheena just wants her 100 million and so should just heal Kanna and leave, but she turns around to find Kanna giving her the death stare. Kanna asks her father to leave her alone with Sheena. Joichiro doesn't want to leave her alone, but she insists, at which he caves in. Kanna asks Sheena if money is all she cares about, at which Sheena realizes that the bad feeling she was getting was because of Kanna. Kanna says that all the doctors are sane, but Sheena is the first woman, though, as men are easy, but it doesn't matter as she doesn't care about Sheena either. Sheena thinks to herself that she's in face a man called Bauchi. Kanna shouts at Sheena to not get in the way of her revenge and asks if she's curious, and she'll tell her and tells her to disappear as she's annoying. Kanna reveals that she doesn't want her legs to heal because she wants to make her dad suffer, as that's her revenge. Sheena claps for Kanna and calls her plan wonderful. This annoys Kanna, who tells her to shut up and leave, but Kanna refuses, saying she will cure Kanna's legs because she needs the money. Kanna asks Sheena if money is all she cares about and again tells her to leave, but Sheena refuses and asks to make a deal, saying she'll grant Kanna anything she wants for her revenge if she lets her cure her legs. Kanna asks Sheena if she'll do anything she wished for and tells her to get naked. Sheena begins to undress, which pleases Kanna. Sheena calls Kanna a fool and tells her that she'll carry out her revenge for her in exchange for letting her cure her legs, and if she tells her how she wants her revenge to go, then she'll help her if she talks to her because she can do anything. Kanna doesn't believe her and says that she won't tell her anything. At this, Sheena pulls out the shop in front of Kanna and buys the Key of Dreams to demonstrate her power to Kanna. Sheena uses the key on Kanna to make her show everything. We see Kanna in her childhood listening to her father tell her that the strong build their castles on the foundations of the weak, and to rule is to distribute and support the ones under you, so the one at the top will prosper by distributing their wealth, and the world is defined by those who spread their fortunes to keep those under them alive. This was Kanna's past that's being watched by the two of them. Sheena can only watch and not interfere. Meanwhile, Kanna feels weird because of her legs. Kanna's father tells her that humans aren't born equal and their Fukuzawa family stands at the top, so she will have to walk upon the ones below her and go above everyone else, and she must be the person who dominates others. Adhering to her father's advice, Kanna excelled in everything ever since she was little, but she is still unable to do anything significant enough to get lots of prizes. They fall through a hole to go to the next memory. It's the memory of Kanna being in the car with her father. Kanna tells Sheena that nothing happens in the memory and asks to go to the next one, but Sheena reveals that she isn't the one controlling this, so Kanna is the one who wants to see this. Joichiro gets busy on the phone and is unable to see the truck heading towards them, which leads to the crash that injured Kanna. After the accident, her parents fought a lot as her mother blamed her father for injuring Kanna, but her friends would always help her. Kanna had told her father that she can't play the piano or swim anymore, but she can still play the violin and can go to cram school and speak English well, but her father told her that it's enough. This infuriated Kanna, who also blamed her father for turning her into what she is now, and she lost her legs and everything she had all because of him. Sheena, after seeing Kanna's story, comments that she's just a brat. Sheena had been curious why Kanna wanted revenge against her father, but now realizes that Kanna is just pretending to play the pitiful tragic heroine in a tragic story, and is now determined to teach her the right way to fight. Kanna asks about the right way to fight, at which Sheena flicks her forehead and tells her to not speak to her like that. Kanna angrily asks Sheena why she did that, at which Sheena asks her if that makes her angry and tells her to try and hit her. Kanna tries to hit Sheena, but Kanna keeps getting away, which further angers Kanna, who says that she can't hit her because she keeps moving away. Sheena says that it's because Kanna can't walk, and if her legs could move, then she would be able to hit back and her revenge would get a lot simpler. Kanna questions healing her legs to get revenge and tells Sheena that she doesn't know anything and asks who she is to say things like that. Sheena explains to Kanna that her mother died when she was around her age due to an illness. When she was on the verge of death, she had held her mother's hand. Her mother couldn't see or hear, and even breathing was painful, but she was still squeezing back, but her father wasn't even present at her mom's deathbed, and he learned about the mother's death later, at which Sheena thought about hitting him, and even killing him in rage, but couldn't muster the courage to do it. That day he had taken everything from her, even her despair and wishes to get the chance to do things over again, so that's why Kanna still has to keep going and leave the work of fixing her legs to her. Kanna doesn't believe Sheena and says that she's making everything up and only cares about the money, at which Sheena prepares to use the Key of Dreams on herself in order to show Kanna her past. Kanna asks Sheena if she realizes that this means that she'll have to see her mother die again, but Sheena is unworried by that and is ready to do it. Sheena uses the key on herself. Kanna asks Sheena how she can go so far for just money, but Sheena has no real reason or purpose and says that if she had her past self in front of her, then she would have done the same without wasting a moment. Sheena says that she doesn't want revenge and just wants to see her mother, but she can't do that, but Kanna's legs will be healed, which will let her punch Sheena as much as she wants, and things will go back to normal for her once her legs get healed, which would be a nice thing. So if she wants to get revenge and get better, then she should just say, because Sheena will grant her anything she wishes for. Kanna now finally drinks the medicine and her legs immediately heal, allowing her to walk. Kanna's parents see her walk for the first time in a long while and fall on their knees and tear up. While Sheena is about to leave, Kanna catches up to her and tells her that her two-sidedness is too intense, but Sheena finds that easier. Kanna asks if she's the only one who knows about this side of Sheena, which she confirms, so Kanna assures her that she won't tell anyone about this, but Sheena is skeptical, at which Kanna asks her to believe her, at which Sheena believes her. Kanna grabs her and tells her that she came to hit her as Sheena promised her that. Sheena agrees and puts on the perfect ring with high defensive strength. Kanna tells Sheena that she'll punch her face, so she should keep her eyes closed, and begins counting down from 3, but instead of hitting her, Kanna just lightly kisses Sheena. Kanna says that as Sheena had said to make anything she said true, so asks her to go out with her. Meanwhile, it appears that the monsters are no longer confined in homes, as we spot one monster breaking the police tapes and walk out onto the street. The monsters are no longer confined and had increased their areas of operations and have poured out into the streets, wreaking havoc and causing massive jams as people try to get as far away from the monsters as they can. Sheena does her best to clear dungeons, but realizes that the dungeons are getting bigger. First, they used to be limited to the house, but now they have increased the size to about 30 to 40 houses. But the cores are everywhere, so it can be assumed that the original dungeons have evolved. Sheena thinks that the evolved cores will sell for a higher price, but worries that the evolution will not end there, and this no longer is about taking money from rich people, as it'll make impossible for people to live, so she needs to think about a contingency plan. Meanwhile, at Buchi's place, Totoki hears the news about the monsters getting aggressive and worries about doing her best, but her sister Mahina motivates her. While Boki sits in his home in his original form, he gets a voicemail from Connie, who thinks he's Sheena and says that he's special to her and she loves her and wants to meet her. Saul also listens to the message and tears up as she reminds him that she saw Kanna kissing him in Sheena's form and says that it isn't fair to her. Saul says that she'll do the same thing Kanna did to him, but Buchi tries to stop her but fails. Later, when Buchi comes downstairs, Kanna notices his injuries, but Buchi downplays them. Totoki says she wants to buy the evacuation supplies for 3 people, at which Buchi says that evacuation will be impossible, but still he'll buy the supplies for 3 people. As Buchi is about to leave, Totoki tries to stop him, saying it's dangerous, but he has some things to check up on, so tells her to stay put as he goes out. In reality, he's going core hunting. Totoki grabs Buchi's hand and begins finger wrestling with him. In the start, Totoki begins to win, but Buchi easily overpowers her and wins in the end. Totoki realizes that it's no good, and she knew that from the moment they started. Buchi tells her to let him go. Totoki says she now knows what she wants to do, and it's obvious that Buchi is much stronger than her, so he will have a much easier time surviving than her, and up till now she was only able to see Buchi's back, and she's here now not because Buchi is stronger than her, but because she doesn't want to see Buchi back, but instead wants to do her best and become stronger. Buchi asks Totoki what exactly she wants to do and pushes her away, saying that nothing will change if she's all talk, and leaves, telling her to stay quietly. After Buchi leaves, Mahina still tries to motivate Totoki. During their childhood, when Totoki was learning how to ride a cycle, she couldn't learn properly, and Buchi would say to go home for the day, but Totoki refused to go back until she could ride cycle, so Buchi threatened to leave her alone. Totoki cries, saying she wants to ride home with him. Bocchi now in Shina's form spots 31 small monsters through the scope, but because she goes hunting gets interrupted by Kanna. Shina asks Kanna why she's there. Kanna reveals that it would have been a pure coincidence if she hadn't installed a tracking app back when they shared each other's contact info. Shina says that she'll delete the app so Kanna should go home as it's dangerous now. Kanna thinks of this as Shina caring about her. Suddenly, a man appears and says that it's dangerous, so they will escort them home and suggests Shina to stay with them and have some fun. Kanna asks what the guy's deal is, and Shina tells him to stay behind. This man is Ousaka, who says that he got to the dungeon before her. Earlier inside the dungeon, Ousaka was beating one of his subordinates for hiding as they are short on their quota. His other men whine about Ousaka giving orders, but they have no choice as he's the one with the gun. Ousaka shouts at the men to get him the cores. They find the core and Ousaka shouts at the men to get the core, otherwise he'll kill them. The masked man, who is Ousaka's eyes, shows him the message that they have found the contractor lady who hunts demon cores. Shina is glad that her word has spread so far. Ousaka reveals that Shina isn't the only one who hunts demon cores and offers a deal telling her to give him all the cores she has. Shina asks what she'll get in return, at which he threatens her with his weapon. Ousaka says she has two options, either give him all her cores or become his woman, and tells her to not choose another option as it would be a shame to not use a body like hers. Shina and Kanna both find the proposal gross. Kanna angrily shouts at Ousaka that Shina is very strong and can wipe out monsters in an instant and even heal her legs, and in the future, she'll marry her, at which Shina thinks that Kanna is lying. Ousaka says he isn't interested in kids, so will turn her over to his men. Shina taunts Ousaka to attack her already, as this is the second time she has been held at gunpoint, as the first person was so scared that they couldn't even fire, so asks him to attack her already. Ousaka asks if he's that stupid as he's already killed people in this way, as the guy annoyed him with a defiant look in his eyes which made him mad. Ousaka says that Shina's attitude makes him angry and he would love to remove her power and clothes at the same time. Kanna says that Ousaka is just being creepy all the time, at which Shina tells her to stand down and takes out her swords, saying she usually doesn't fight people. Ousaka realizes that the fight can't be avoided, so tells his men to ensure that Shina doesn't get too hurt and prepares to fight, but Shina simply grabs Kanna and jumps away from there. Ousaka shouts at his men to stand up and go get the core. Suddenly the big guy with Ousaka appears in front of Shina and punches her, but she manages to block with her sword. The guy is surprised to see that she isn't dead yet. Ousaka tells the man to not kill Shina, but instead break her legs to make her submit. Shina thinks that the big guy isn't worth the effort, so bypasses him and tries to attack Ousaka first, but gets stopped by the masked man. Ousaka tells her that it's useless, so she should give up and hand over her cores to him. Shina keeps staring at Ousaka, at which she realizes that the eyes are the same as Bocchi and begins to panic. Shina asks if anything's the matter. Ousaka isn't able to believe himself, as he had killed Bocchi back then, but Shina taunts him that if he wasn't able to kill someone like that, then he's just a small fry, which enrages him. Shina spots a few of Ousaka's guys going for Kanna, so she releases her stored items, which makes swords fall out, making the men fall back. Shina realizes that she can't properly fight while Kanna is with her, so grabs her and falls back. Ousaka realizes that it was Bocchi and decides to kill him properly this time. Kanna is excited from the danger she just faced and asks Shina if she's too heavy. Shina wants to drop Kanna off, but her house is too far away, so she takes her to her house. Totoki thinks that Bocchi has returned, so welcomes him back excitedly, but gets surprised to spot Shina and Kanna.